Don't do anything silly behind me. Okay. Holy moly, look at his hair. Look at his hair. How do you lose this much hair in one chunk? Okay, all right. Don't do anything silly. Welcome to HeartTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video that I do on Sundays, and apparently I haven't centered my, let's do this, okay, right. That's a little more in the center. Okay, again, don't do anything silly. Gardening question video that I do on Sundays. You can ask gardening questions down below, and I will pick from those each week. There is a playlist on the channel called Garden Question and Answer if you want to go back and take a look at that. If you want to take a look at how the garden came together around me in the last 18 months here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B, there's also a playlist for that. So you can go back and look at some of those videos. This past week, I got home from the Gulf and started some projects here at the house, tearing out some of the summer annuals. I've got some pansies planted now. Some of my bulbs are in. You'll see all those videos this week. But the next, I think 3 to 4 weeks, you'll see this garden heading forward, plus that back fence. The back piece of this fence is going to go in here before, hopefully before December, actually. So that's coming pretty quickly now. So let's get to some gardening questions from last week. Last week's video was shot down on the Gulf. Somebody asked me about pruning their Carolina Sapphire, Arizona Cypress now, and yeah, you can definitely do it. I mean, most of the time, you know, we say our general pruning on conifers is probably best done in late winter, because however you prune it now, that's how it's going to look, you know, through the winter. So that's, you know, that's an issue. Just keep that in mind if you're butchering on it, you know, in the early winter. That's what you have to live with. So frequently I just do that at the end of the winter, but not because it's the best time necessarily. It's more just, you know, I don't want it to look poor through the winter. But I have one of those Arizona Cypress in a container in the front garden space, and it's actually blocking a path a little. So I just go along and shear it. You can do it 12 months out of the year. It doesn't matter if it's a small amount. Okay, somebody asked me about saving sweet potato vines. Which you can do. You can actually, a couple of different ways. If you had planted the sweet potato vines down in the ground, you can actually dig up the sweet potato and plant it in a container and actually grow it in the house as a house plant through the winter. You need good light, but that's a possibility. It will probably not be great looking plant in your house through the winter, but it will survive the winter, which is what you're looking for it to do. The other thing you can do is dig up the sweet potato or the tuber and store it in something like vermiculite. Is a way that tubers are stored through the winter. So that's an option as well. You just keep it in a cool, dark place. There's probably a lot of videos on how to save dahlias and sweet potatoes and those kinds of things if you want to find them on YouTube and explore that. For me, I save things based on their replacement value. So I've got an okra, Holly, no ma'am. So I have an okra over here that's Buddy Lee gave to me that's several hundred years old, a variety. So they're 12 foot tall over there, and they're ugly as they can be with okra on the top of them so that I can save the seed. And there's a couple of dahlias over there that are really quite beautiful that I'm going to save. I just may not, I probably won't be able to find them. So that's my saving thing, is either how much is it going to cost to replace it, or, you know, how valuable it is to me, or how irreplaceable it is to me. That sweet potato vine I can probably buy for $3 next spring, and so I probably won't put the effort in, because I can buy one gold sweet potato vine and then I can take cuttings on it really quickly. I can have 10, you know, by the middle of May. So that's actually, I'm not discouraging you from doing it. It would be fairly easy to do, but again, you know, as you're looking around your garden and you're going to put effort into saving things and doing things for the winter, sweet potato vine's pretty low on my list, just for that reason. Just throwing that out there as a thought process for how to think about saving, what to save and what not to save. Okay. Somebody asked me, okay, so I was on the Gulf for 18 days actually, and somebody asked me if the garden needed supervising. I have a lot of container plants because I've got upcoming jobs in this landscape and other landscapes, and so those were put out on the driveway, and I had somebody come and water those, okay? They didn't have to be watered very often at this point, though. Or in the summertime, obviously, they got to come every day. The rest of the landscape at this time of year is pretty self-sustaining. There are a few pots in the landscape, and those were also watered once or twice while I was gone. Of course, in the summer, was very different, you know. But by October, these cooler mornings and shorter days, even the container plants that got a little dry while I was gone, are fine. You know, they didn't struggle at all. So it's part of it's based on what time of year it is as to whether or not you have to get somebody to help you out. I always have to get somebody to help me out because I have so many containers. And I think everybody would need to get somebody to help them out if it was June, July, or August, or early September, just because, you know, even, you know, in 18 days, the lawn would have needed to be watered if it was July, almost certainly at some point. And what I do typically when I left in June is I'll just put the sprinkler exactly where, on this tiny little lot, you know, I can put one sprinkler here in the middle that goes, you know, this way and that way, and one in the front that does the same thing. And I just say, turn the one on the back for an hour and go home, and then come back and turn the one on the front for an hour and go home. So I make it as simple as possible for whoever is maintaining it, and then they water the pots. Okay, enough of that. Somebody asked me if I'm going to do subscriber photo videos again. Probably sometime this winter I'll get back to doing it. I actually was, honestly, if I have to say, it was kind of a welcome break from that. That video had gotten longer and longer and longer, obviously, because I had more and more subscribers and more people participating. But editing that video every month is quite difficult. I mean, when you get photos that are literally every single person that took a photo took it in a different size or sent it in a different format, and you try to put that video together every month, it was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And I know I can get somebody to probably help me with that. But you're talking about weirdly, video that didn't get watched all that much either. So paying someone to edit it is also kind of a weird thing. Yes, I'm going to get back to it with a smile on my face, because I'm probably just going to do it like a few times a year rather than do it every month. And I think that will help me and help. I enjoy the video. I actually enjoyed your photos. It just got to be that it was 6 or 8 hours. I should say it that way, of editing to get that video accomplished. So I don't mind doing that, but I'm going to lessen the number of times a year that I'm going to do it. So there you go. Yes, subscriber photos. It'll be back. Okay. Somebody asked me about the my aloe flowering. Their aloe never flowers. That one that's out in the front garden has been outside all summer long, and then as soon as the days got shorter and the nights got cooler, it started blooming. Same thing down in the Gulf when I see them, and the ones I see out in people's gardens as well. So I don't know if you're allowing it to be, you probably need it to be outside and allow it to go through the fall drop in temperature in order to see it flower. Okay. Somebody asked me if burning bush was invasive in the North Carolina mountains. They have one, and they wanted to know whether they should get rid of it or not. Yeah, it's invasive, and even a single plant, it is actually has the male and female flower parts on a burning bush. Not all plants do. Some plants we can get away with having just the female or the male plant and not have seeds. But burning bush are capable of doing it themselves. And this is an interesting one in invasive plant, really, because the Northeast is just, heck, I spent Christmas last year in Connecticut, and man, there's burning bush and barberries. Like every ditch is burning bush and barberries. And you come down here to my area of North Carolina, and we don't have. I've seen burning bush seed themselves, but I don't see burning bush as an invasive plant. We got plenty of invasive plants. we got plenty. We don't need any more. But by the time you get here, barberries and this far south, barberries and burning bush are not really invasive. I would imagine up in the North Carolina mountains that's going to be different, though, because you're going to have a similar climate to Connecticut and to the places up in the Northeast. But it's just so interesting to me how area specific it can be, other than Chinese privet, which seems to be anywhere and everywhere. But most things that are invasive one area are just somebody else's ornamental plant. But burning bush in the mountains almost certainly going to potentially be an invasive. I will say I don't think there's, I mean, obviously burning bush and barberries, and there are some newer barberries that are seed free. I need to be saying this now when we talk about invasive plants, is there is a tremendous amount of work going on in plant breeding to continue to be able to enjoy some of these plants as ornamental plants in the future without having the threat of them being invasive. Unfortunately, the barberries are, there's nothing the state of Connecticut can do about barberries and burning bush at this point. I just don't think there's anything you can do. They're just everywhere. How would you, I don't know that we've ever put an invasive plant like that back in the box, so anyway, but yeah, I would probably, if you're concerned about it in North Carolina mountains, I'd probably remove it. Okay, somebody asked me if they should fertilize their camellia now that has started blooming. No, definitely not. I would wait until the late winter to fertilize it, early spring. That's when I fertilize everything in my landscape. You'll see a video when it happens, but you definitely don't want to be pushing your camellia at this time of the year. Okay, somebody asked me, they had gotten those Summer Jewel Salvia seeds. I talk about the Summer Jewel Salvia all summer this year. I wanted to know when to start them. You can look on the back of the package for any seed, and it will say how long, if you're doing them for transplants, meaning you're starting them inside or starting them wherever, you're starting them in a pot or a little small container, how long the transplants take before they go in the ground. And so typically, like on something like that Salvia, it'll probably say 4 to 6 weeks. And so you just take your average frost, your average last frost date, and for me that's around April 15th, and just subtract 4 to 6 weeks from that. And that's the sweet spot for starting those seeds. So I'm kind of explaining how to start any seed when you start. You just back off the amount of time that it says on the back of the package from your average last frost date, or maybe add another week to your average last frost date. That way you don't get yourself in trouble. So if mine's the 15th, I'm going to say I'm not putting them in the ground before April 22nd or April 25th or something like that, and then back off from that. That way, if the winter does try to last a little longer, it won't burn you that way. So, but that's the answer to pretty much any seed. Just back off from whatever amount of time it says. Okay, let's see. And then I got a question about what's grown from seed in this landscape. So you see all these tour videos. I'm actually going to do that video too this week. So you'll see all the things I've purchased for seed for next spring in a single video, all the flowers, all the vegetables in a single video, and I'll show you where I've ordered them from and that kind of thing. I'll pick up a few more things too. I'll be somewhere, someplace, and I'll see some other things through the winter as well. But I do gather up my the things I'm going to do from seed in the late winter are mostly already gathered up, and I'll show you those this week. But of the percentage of what you're seeing in the landscape that I did from seed, I'm talking about flowering annuals and perennials, it's probably 50-50 that I did seed versus purchased. And the things I purchase, I typically go down to Big Bloomers in Sanford, North Carolina. If you haven't heard of that place, it's pretty awesome. Okay, Big Bloomers, if I didn't say that clearly. Let's see. Oh, somebody asked me what are the upcoming camellia. In the Bobby Green video that I did down on the Gulf Coast, he said he had a couple more camellias coming to the Southern Living Plant Collection. That crimson and clover one that was in that video that I have in this front garden space, and light pink shishi, which is a dwarf light pink sasanqua, those are coming and approved, but he actually has a couple more too. One thing that you guys need to know, when I go to Bobby's, Bobby has scaled his nursery way down, and so we were looking at plants that were in his garden and landscape. I was trying to figure out what to shoot and what not to shoot. There's a lot of things in some of these gardens from these plant breeders, and in there, he only has 2 greenhouses now that he's working in, or maybe it was 3. And most of the things in there are things that are actually being trialed to be released later. And we have an issue in this business in the plant breeding world where, you can accidentally start your patent clock. If you advertise plants, prematurely before, in the patent, you can actually You know, you got 20 years on a plant patent, and you know, you can end up using the first year or two by accident, by showing them and talking about them and that kind of thing too early. And so I have to be, you know, I go into these places and I say, can I shoot this? Can I not shoot that? You know, I was at when I was at Danny Werner's house, I think the second video from this series, this Plant Masters series that I'm calling it now. He's got red buds that I can't show. I mean, these guys have a lot of, they've done a lot of work in their lifetimes to get to this point, and I'm certainly not going to put the plants on the videos that will start the patent clock for them. Anyway, I'll talk more about that later. I'm going to go down and see Dr. Durr in the next month, and I'm going to spend some time talking about him because he's got a different opinion about this, but I'll talk about it then. Okay, let's see. Best time to transplant a butterfly bush. You're actually going to see a video of me transplanting this big Grand Cascade butterfly bush in the next week or two. Best time after it's completely dormant. So it would be, you know, that would be for me November 15th until March 15th. Probably any time in that window would be fine, and you can cut it some. If you're going to transplant it, you should probably go ahead and just cut it back hard. But typically, if I'm leaving one in place and not transplanting it, I don't cut it hard until late winter. But if you're transplanting it, go ahead and cut it. But anytime when it's completely dormant, they're kind of hard to kill, honestly. Do planting. Somebody asked me, I've talked about in the past, not using potting soil in containers for shrubs, or just all potting soil because it kind of stays too wet, and wanted to know if they can mix some pine bark soil conditioner in. Yeah, if you can find pine bark soil conditioner, real fine ground pine bark, that's the perfect thing to mix into potting soil. And I've kind of gone to compost and pine bark in my containers now. I'm trying not to use any peat-based products, really, and some environmental reason, and also I find it just kind of easier to mix that compost and pine bark together. Compost always typically weighs a little more too, and I like weighting the container down just a little bit, so I'm probably doing 2/3 compost and 1/3 pine bark soil conditioner, and that has been a really great mix for my containers this year, and just avoiding buying peat moss altogether. Okay, somebody asked me about mums in the garden and would they come back. Those mums that you're seeing this time of year at the garden centers and at the box stores were not bred to be great garden plants. They were bred to be perfect little round balls in an 8-inch pot to entice you to buy them in the fall. And I love them as much as anybody else does. How can you not? They're just perfect uniform balls of flowers. But they really weren't bred for your landscape. They frequently will come back. And if you prune them in half in like mid-May, mid-June, mid-July, I mean, just literally prune them in half, you can create halfway decent ornamental plants from them, but not really. They just weren't bred for that. They were bred for the flower market. Let's just call it that. But there are a lot of mums. If you the very beginning of the Bobby Green video from this past week, that first shot of a flower is a perennial mum. That's one that comes back. And I grew Sheffield for years at my nursery. Sheffield is a great one if you can find it, but you also have to be a tolerant gardener of a plant that can be a bully in your landscape. So Sheffield it can grow very vigorously during the season and bully some of your other plants. So it's worth having. It's a beautiful plant this time of year, and it blooms a long time. As long as we don't get an early frost or a freeze, that plant really blooms a long time. But it can just get really big during a single season. But that's Sheffield. But there's a lot of others too. There's a lot of hardy mums out there that you can plant in your landscape. But those ones that you're getting on the tables at Lowe's are not them. They're just not. So I'll stop this here. Thank you guys very much for watching, following along, liking the videos, again, participating below them, asking questions, that kind of thing. I really do appreciate it. And I've got several more videos coming from the Gulf yet, including a tour from the Mobile Botanical Garden. And I've got one more Dr. Armitage video, actually, that should be fairly fun. I haven't even looked at it yet, and that was from like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I'll get that up soon as well. So Thanks for watching.